We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and a happy 4th of July to all the Americans that are listening to this program. I guess for other people it just doesn't have that same kind of feeling. I'm not even sure if it has the same kind of feeling for Americans anymore. At least some of us who are awake or doing our best to stay awake while we're being inundated in our environment by electronic smog, genetically modified organisms, chemicals in our water, and, oh yes, the clouds, the artificial clouds dripping down from our skies. And if you can somehow manage to awaken and stay awake during these periods in time where there are forces out there that do everything in their power to help you stay asleep or at least keep you entrained in some sort of zombified condition, well, you are heroic and you qualify as a true American. Let me just put that out there. I think we're trying to define what that means these days to be a true American, because the idea of patriotism and God and country have been completely hijacked, utterly hijacked. And the values that this country once stood for have long been since replaced by some other synthetic simulacra. Instead of freedom, we have rights. Very different. It's a very different thing. And we have been, everything that the Constitution and the framers of the Constitution put forward have been replaced by a set of subjective, humanistic values. Values are always something that are malleable. They are not God-given laws or rights. They're values, they're human-placed, they are human-created, and therefore they are just as fallible as you and I. And so today we look at what it means to be an American. And in a minute or two, I'm going to be bringing on a true American, and Alexandra Hunter, and we're going to talk about what happened on June 25th in Arizona, which I think is quite historic in some ways. But what does it mean to be an American? If you have the right bumper sticker on your car, and you listen to the right country and Western music, and you believe or root for the right football team, and you get all your vaccinations, and you vote Republican, and you shop at Walmart, and you go to church on Sunday, and you support the military no matter what, because our men and women are fighting for our freedom to consume every single day. Is that what it means to be an American? Or is it some form of slightly modified dissent where everything comes from the left-hand side, and that you're anti-consumerism, you're anti-big business, and you're for more big government, more legislation, and less, in some ways, less personal freedoms and rights, so that the state can then modify and issue one's consent, because that's the other side of it. And these are the other values. Both values are synthetic. They're both placed on the left and the right, and neither of them really begin to speak to what it is to be an American. To be an American is to become aware and sovereign, and to be able to rule over one's own domain. That's what it means to be an American. It's what it means to be a human. And theoretically, the American story should have been the planetary story. But unfortunately, what we have now is we have this strange and gross version of what we call democracy. It spreads like a venereal disease around the planet, and really all it is just a cover for the IMF and the World Bank to come in to a third world country or developing nation, one that's outside of the clutches of the IMF or the World Bank, and then lay waste to the local governments, grab their resources, put them in the shackles of debt, and suck them up into what will be the New World Order, all under the aegis of democracy. So here we are today, July 4th, and we're gonna open up this discussion. We're going to open up what it means to be an American, to fight for something, which is actually human, by the way. It's a human experience, but to fight for something that is as inviolate as nature itself, and that's our skies and what we breathe. And let me bring on a true patriot and somebody that's at the forefront of taking on the whole geoengineering, aka chemtrail issue, and that's Alexandra Hunter. Hello there, Alexandra.
Hi, Robert. Hi, thank you for having me on this morning. It's still morning here in Arizona.
It's always my pleasure. First question, what do the skies look like today?
Well, we have a little rain happening, so I did go outside and put a clean glass jar out to see if I can capture some of this tainted rain that's coming down to see if I can get enough to run another sample. I would never walk outside when it first starts raining, folks. That's the heaviest amount of stuff that comes down initially, which Francis Mangels told me about a couple of years ago, and he's right on the button on that, being a master biologist and former employee of the U.S. Forestry Service. So we have a little overcast, probably, as usual, all engineered, and a little bit of precipitation. Last night we had a huge dust storm come in here, a lot of wind, a lot of lightning, and I would imagine from all the saturation of the atmosphere with the metallic, metal particulates, it's just charged. The atmosphere, troposphere is totally charged. So a lot of, I guess when I was a little girl or younger, we would call that heat lightning, but clearly I know a lot more at this point in my life. So that's the state of affairs in Phoenix, Arizona on July 4th of 2014.
So let's back up and hit reverse on the tape. I think it's a really important point that we don't want to gloss over. Most of us are trying to figure out how to stay safe and healthy during these times where we're completely bombarded by these particulates. And you just said that when a rainstorm first hits, you don't want to be out in it because that's where the most dense concentration of the particulates and everything else that are part of the rain, that's when it's all coming down.
That's correct. And after spending some very substantive time with Francis Mangels up in Mount Shasta, he explained to me the biology of the situation and forewarned me. Even there, at one point right before I left there, I was up there for about 3 or 4 months. It started to snow. Same situation for snow, or what is obviously ice nucleation, because you had that happening all winter all over the country with huge downfalls of snow, not real snow, artificially nucleated, at temperatures above 32 degrees.
Interesting. Well, of course, they came up with their little buzzword catchphrase, polar vortex, to explain why this phenomenon was occurring. They've always got their little outs. let's talk about this historic date, June 25th, which was not that long ago. You guys went on the public record with Senator Kelli Ward in Arizona. I'd like for you to talk about that event, and not just what happened at the event in your statement, but how you guys engineered that, how you brought this to bear as far as a legal proceeding. I think it's important for people to understand this, because perhaps there is a model for this to be played out in other parts of the country.
Well, first of all, Robert, I need to thank the people that live up in Kingman, Arizona, that were persevering with Senator Ward for at least 2 years. A gal that really spearheaded that up there is a woman by the name of Bridget Langston, and another lady by the name of Dory McCutcheon, Al DeSicchio, and another gentleman named Gianluca Zana. And if I've missed anybody else, those are the 4 primary people that I, have been in touch with, although I have been communicating and doing co-activist work with Al for a couple of years. But anyway, they persevered. That is their district up there, Mojave County. Mm-hmm. Dr. Kelli Ward is their Arizona state senator, and so they persevered. So all due credit goes to the people that live there. They kept pushing. What happened up there was that, gosh, I think they have about 50 people that have tested with just off-the-charts blood and hair analysis of the aluminum, barium, and strontium. And so they're observing what everyone else is observing, unmarked, unidentifiable aircraft that are specially retrofitted with nozzles on the wings and the tails, not jet engine emissions. They're
right.
seeing up there what people are seeing all over the world. So they persevered to press the Senator Ward, and I give her complete kudos. There's no other state or federal senator, Robert, that did something like this. Obviously, Senator Ward is abiding by her sacred oath to take into account her constituents' concerns and holding a meeting. So they pressed for that meeting. I found out about it, and then I prepared my statement because my expertise is in the legal field, and I knew that, perhaps no one else would be there that could inform the folks about what our legal rights are here under Arizona law. And so I traveled up there with a couple of other Phoenix activists, Mike Basic and Sweetie Cochran. So we would have gone anywhere in this state, but it was Bridget and her team of dedicated, concerned citizens that really persevered with the senator. And the senator is doing what she's paid to do. She serves at our pleasure. So again, kudos to Dr. Kelli Ward for having this meeting, especially since it was with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. They are the stateside environmental agency, and it is incumbent upon them under Arizona law to address this. So that's a little background on, I want to give credit where credit is due. I'm just coming in and helping with the legal aspect of this, and of course I'm just getting warmed up now. I'm certainly not finished. I will be taking more steps to assist the people here in Arizona to push this ball forward.
Mm-hmm. So it's important to note that she's a state senator, not a federal senator. Do you think that because of that, she was more easily accessible and open to having this kind of hearing?
Well, I haven't done a lot of research on Dr. Ward. I do see that she has pushed some agendas that are with regard to Arizona sovereignty as opposed to the big federal bad boy government usurping states' rights. Mm-hmm. So I would say, yeah. This gal is a medical doctor. She works there in a hospital, and she's right there. And again, all credit goes to the folks that are up there that just persevered, and they've got the medical test results that affirms that there's an issue. And frankly, when we got out of the car up there, it's very, very windy. It is typically very, very windy in that part of the state. Mm-hmm. And possibly because of them living in those conditions, the people up there are getting sicker quicker because the wind is constantly blowing. And, these are nanoparticulates. And so I know that one of the messages that Bridget wants to convey to people, she mentioned it the other day, is she's really asking more people to get those blood and hair analysis done so that we can bring forward more confirmation of the health effects that people are enduring.
It seems to me that that Kingman area is a pretty strong patriot community, that these are people that are fairly invested in the sovereign rights and being self-determinant, and have been for quite a while, actually. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's where Timothy McVeigh and some of these, characters, turncoats, were hanging out just before they got arrested. And it would not be surprising to me if they would actually target an area like that with more dense spraying or more frequent spraying, so that they could actually, almost as a line of defense, keep these people down in some ways. Did you guys talk about that, or did that ever cross your paths in terms of conversation?
No, it did not come up, Robert. I can tell you that I'm down here in Phoenix, and they hammer us down here. Yeah. It's been fairly clear since the event, which was a week ago Wednesday, but there is fallout still happening. A couple of evenings ago, I definitely saw some planes come out close to dusk. There's fallout still coming down, so they're either ramming it up to a higher altitude here. There's also stuff that comes in from Los Angeles. One of our lead activists, John Graff, is in L.A., and I'm in daily contact with John, and everything. Of course, the wind moves from the west to the east, so they could be pummeling out here west of town, and it floats in, or they're up at a higher altitude. There's chemistry to this. There's physics, geometry, and chemistry involved here, and these guys clearly are, I guess, perfecting their madcap science experiment. Listen, when you do a little research, Robert, and you see that the United Nations has a global network set up all over the world with aerosol, quote-unquote, monitoring stations. They call it aerosol monitoring stations. So they've already got the network set up to measure this stuff, to see, saturation points, and do they need to let up here or add a little more. This is a long-winded operation that's fully in force and effect, but I believe there are a lot of patriots up in that part of the state, and I think that there's a mindset out here in Arizona of sovereignty. I know that the people down here are, gun rights are wide open here, and I don't think anybody in this state is going to let that one go. So as far as that goes, we're all being targeted. It seems to be that, major cities are just pummeled. John's in L.A. They're just hammered every day. We've got folks in San Francisco. We've got folks up there in Mount Shasta. A lot of people don't understand that Mount Shasta is the primary initial water source of the entire state. They've targeted California because of the food supply issues. So, and that's just a couple of spots in our country. There's patriots up there. I would say that there's patriots everywhere. I think there's a lot of awake people. Mainstream media is not letting on to that, of course, because there are They're completely compromised and controlled. But they're a great group of people. It was a precedent-setting event because no state or federal senator has had an open public meeting of this nature with the environmental quality folks.
Yeah.
So by virtue of an elected rep having an attorney there from the state agency, whether they realized it or not going into this, I'm so grateful to Dr. Kelli Ward. It was just a godsend as far as I'm concerned because they've been placed on actual legal notice now. It was a public meeting. It was recorded. It's on the public record. So it's a great thing for us. You know, it's a success story. And I agree with you. I would love to see other people. They need to do this in their states. Everybody needs to do this. They need to find a rep that is sympathetic to this and start making that pressure with their state agency and their elected rep to get on the record.
Mm-hmm. What kind of turnout was there? I mean, there was obviously the group from Kingman and the folks that came up from Phoenix with you. Were there other people that knew about this? What kind of numbers are we talking about?
There was about 120 people there. It was at 5 p.m. at night. I think more people would have come. Some people, the locals are saying a lot more people would have come there locally, but they were working or still at work. Mm-hmm. There were some people that came down from Utah and Nevada. It was live streamed, so, and it's all been archived. But it was 120 folks, and really the majority of those people have had their blood tested or their hair tested. There was several Vietnam veterans there that also were harmed by the Agent Orange that they were subjected to in Vietnam, and a couple of those guys did stand up and talk about the damage that they had to endure when they were in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting about this is that the stories had a ripple effect, and just a few days after, it was picked up by Raw Story, and I put that link up on your page on Facebook. So Raw Story picks this up, and of course they frame it in such a way that it's newsworthy, but the people that are involved are a bunch of kooks. And the tagline was, "We're being sprayed like bugs, and we don't dig it." So of course it's going to get attention, it's going to get eyeballs, but it's also in some ways kind of one of the more dismissive statements, or one of the more dismissive framings of a statement that came through that. So this is getting some slightly mainstream attention now, which I think is good. They say, any press is good press, and I would tend to agree with that, even if it's slightly slanted to the you're a tin hat wearing lunatic job. I still think it's important because that broadcast is going to get out there, and certain people are going to pick it up, and they're going to sift through that and make up their own minds as a result of this.
Well, that's true, and not only some of the more alternative publications and so forth picked it up, but the mainstream newspapers up there did cover it, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you wouldn't expect that would have happened, and all press is good press. And I just want to remind all these folks, and I can't say this enough, these people are all kidding themselves if they're exempt from this. We're all breathing the air. These are nanoparticulates. So they can do their jobs and collect their paychecks, but at the end of the day, they're breathing this stuff. Nobody's exempt from it. Yeah. And I said this the other day on an interview, and I've been saying this quite a lot. I don't understand who protects their own murderers. Who does that? And you may not like the answer of who's doing this, but don't shoot the messenger. I'm making observations. I'm a very credible person. Would have never jumped on the bandwagon here unless I was 1,000% sure. And here in Phoenix, and we have the photographic evidence and the videotaped evidence, these are unmarked airplanes, and they have nozzles on the tails and the wings of these airplanes. So we've got the data. We have the evidence, folks. And to anyone that wants to disenfranchise folks that are telling the truth, they're protecting the people harming them and their families. And if they really care about their survival and their health and the ecosystem's health, they better think long and hard. This is not a popularity contest as far as I'm concerned. I'm only doing this because I care about the survival of our people on this planet and our incredible ecosystem. And so, that's where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from a place of tinfoil hats or crazy stuff. My reputation precedes me in business, and I am here to merely tell the truth because I actually care about what's going on. And I'm not buying the, irrelevant chatter, but I do appreciate anything that goes out there. I expect that type of response. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. But like you said,
also,
all press can be good press, and I agree.
Yeah, and also I think the story could have been worse in some ways. I mean, I think that they poked a few jabs at the movement or the idea of the movement, but I think it could have been a lot worse. Just to give you an idea as to how pervasive the chemtrail spraying is, we were watching a TV series called Naked and Afraid last night, and it's when two people are, they disrobe, one man, one woman, they're dropped in a remote region, and they have to survive in that remote region for 21 days. And one of the remote regions that a group of people had been dropped in was I believe it was the Peruvian Amazon. And sure enough, they did a time-lapse photography of the sky, and you could recognize that there were chemtrail clouds in the sky. So even an area like the Amazon is not immune to chemtrails. I mean, they're virtually everywhere that we walk and breathe. And it was fascinating to see that on that show. There used to be, I think, Alexandra, a time, and I remember this in California. We used to get a break when I lived in Northern California, and the break would generally occur during the summertime, like right around April, May, right around May. So we'd get May, June, July, August, and then they would start up again in September. And I think that partially the reason for that was that they were going to the Southern Hemisphere and spending more time in the Southern Hemisphere and mixing the particulates in with the cloud cover and the winter season in the Southern Hemisphere. And then they would come back to the Northern Hemisphere and jump on the fall-winter cycle again. This was my observation. But now it seems like they've broken rank with that, and it's just pretty much pervasive all the time now.
That's the way it appears to be here as well. And that's the reports that I'm getting from people all over the world. And I'm in touch with people all over the world. And as I said earlier, if you think about this in terms of science, this is science, it's chemistry, it's geometry, and it's physics. And they've been, again, quote, perfecting their science experiment with the drop of the particulates in certain areas, and then the EMFs that they're using to move it. Stuff comes in here, and I can smell it wants to rain, but they take it and they move it. They just move it right out of here. The last time, they moved it up to Boulder, and then they dumped it in Boulder. They started it down in Mexico. I mean, you can see this whole thing on the satellite.
Right.
They started it down in Mexico. They pulled it through here, and then they just parked it, over Boulder. And I have a real sweet spot in my heart for Boulder, Colorado, because that's where my family's from. That's where my son went to university. My family, I mean, we're big. I mean, so that that's what they do. They take it and they move it. And it may sound crazy to most people, but once you investigate this and you understand that advanced military capabilities, it's not crazy. That's exactly what they're doing. Half the stuff that they're doing, we don't even know about. We're not made privy. I mean, I think people have done a pretty darn good job of ascertaining thus far what their capabilities are. But so.
Yeah, that was when they had the big floods in Boulder? Is that they just moved everything up to Boulder? Is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
Yeah.
It started down in Mexico, and it didn't start down in the Gulf. They started that baby up in Mexico, and they pulled it through here. And we did get some rain, and then they moved it up Boulder, and then they did that dump.
They just dumped it. Oh my God! I mean, think of how it's also accumulating as it's moving and gaining more mass as it's moving as well. That's actually a pretty scary thought. They've got a big storm now that they're playing around with in the South Atlantic off the coast of Florida, Arthur. And so we're seeing the first hurricane, it looks like, a potential hurricane of the hurricane season. Of course, Arthur being the king of the Knights of the Round Table, very interesting name. You did a five-page statement. You've got that. You sent that to me, which I think is pretty important, maybe a little bit long to read on air. But did you post that over on your website?
I'm not sure if it's been posted on the website. You mean Stop Spraying AZ?
That's right.
Yeah. I think I sent it to Sweetie Cochran, and hopefully they can get it up over there. I'm not involved with the administration of that website. The couple, I helped co-found that group, and the couple that runs that website are Cheryl and Les Greenfield. And I think Sweetie might have sent it to them, so I'm not sure if it's up there. I've given this statement to quite a few other activists, and I'm in a lot of groups posting some documentation that goes with this, a resolution-style statement for other lead activists to use and get around and share to the folks in their areas for use. But so far, I don't think it's up there, but, I'll make a note of that and make sure that, it does get posted.
Yeah, because I think if there's a rough template and some tools that people can share and apply to wherever they're living, I think it could be a really helpful means to an end in terms of getting more of a dialogue in the public space happening. Also, I'm wondering about this whole concept of like natural law or constitutional law, and people like Spencer Barkley who might come in from this other angle, who might be able to combine the sort of, for lack of a better term, the magical codex of natural or constitutional law as it relates to the chemtrail issue, and therefore the dialogue could be very, very different. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head with something like this. Have you guys had any kind of convergence around the sovereignty movement and the natural law movement and chemtrail activism? Have you seen anything along these lines?
Well, as a matter of fact, this is great you brought this up. Kevin Annett, do you know who he is?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, Kevin, is going after the pedophile situation on a common law hearing, and that all went down. And so the idea now is that Kevin and some of his folks here in the United States are going to initiate a common law hearing here in the States to get it going. And one of the gals that's helping him with that is a woman by the name of Janice Barcello. I've been in contact with her. So taking that approach from the common law standpoint is being contemplated now. And they're in the process of sort of organizing, getting proof positive evidence together. So that's being contemplated from the common law standpoint. Now, the natural law standpoint, not that I'm aware of, but I I believe in natural law. All this other stuff, all this man-made stuff, You know,
right.
I am a legal person, but I do believe, you know, the real law of the universe, the multiverse, is natural law. So I can't speak to that. I haven't had contact with anyone, but I'm willing to partner with anyone here that's seriously dedicated to helping us move this along and expand the consciousness on this and overcome it.
Well, because everything, you know, that from what I understand, and I'm not an expert in natural law or common law, but I understand sort of the big picture, and that it's based on almost the magical words and spell casting, to be honest with you. That's what it really boils down to. And with the right understanding and parsing of phrases and words and understanding a person's legal status versus legal fiction status and all the stuff that goes along with that, the end result could be almost a paralytic effect on the other side, so that they would have to accede to the wishes of the person that is bringing an issue to their attention. So I'm just thinking that, you know, if the right person comes along or has the right, you know, parsing of the phrase and understanding of the law and brings this issue to bear, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I mean, it could be really potent. I mean, that's my thought. That's my thoughts around it.
Well, one of my core understandings of natural law is that it's based on the truth. And one of those core value truths is that you must defend yourself when you are being harmed by anyone. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed, it's not acceptable to harm other people. So when you're being harmed, you have the ability, of course, and you should defend yourself. Mm-hmm. So as far as natural law goes, that's a root core value.
Right.
There's a great guy, and you'll have to beg my pardon. I cannot remember his name. He's out on the East Coast, and he's really, and I listened to a bunch of his videotapes, and you'll have to excuse me. Maybe you know who I'm talking about. He's the guy that's been going around doing a lot of talks about natural law, and he was some guy that was with the Satanist group, and he pulled out of it, and I can't remember his name, but very inspirational guy. And
you're not talking about Mark Passio, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about Mark Passio.
Yeah,
that's the guy.
A lot of people are very. He's a kind of an important figure in a lot of people's lives in terms of determining a lot of these principles. Very smart guy, very turned on and enlightened guy. That would be. I think you'd be interested. There's a guy in the West Coast named Spencer Barkley who I've been in conversation with, and he is a friend of Neil Kramer's, and they do stuff together. And Spencer has a pretty potent understanding of natural and common law. So I'm trying to get him on the show. Maybe we could talk about that at some point down the line. It just seems to me like if we're going to go after this, we have to go after it in a way that is unconventional. That we have to, you know, we've got to have asymmetrical sort of tactics. And
I agree. I think we have to be making, and I think we are now taking approaches from several angles, so to speak. You know, there's a judicial approach. There's a legislative approach. I mean, these are standard approaches. There's a lot of technicality to this issue, describing it, understanding it. I try to boil it down when I say things like, who would protect their own murderers? I mean, who would do that? Because that's actually what's going on here, folks. You're covering for the people that are harming you and your children or your grandchildren or your wife or your mother. You know, I mean, that to me, that's, you know, if you take out all the technicality of this, if someone came to your front door with a loaded gun and was going to blow you and your family away, what would you do? You would defend your right to life.
Right.
You defend yourself. There's no difference here, okay? The difference is that I think a lot of these guys, for the most part, they know who's doing this, who's implementing it. And there's the fear factor going on. These would be the guys that we would have to confront. But for the most part, if you think about it, there's more of us than there are of them. I mean, there's only so many airplanes. They've only got so many pilots. I suppose some of these are droned as well.
I think probably more than we know or understand are automatically navigated and controlled. So,
right.
Because you just want to take as much of the human equation out of it as possible, right? So if you're them, not us.
Right.
Here's what I think. I think that there are people, like if you sat down to a person with people in the Congress and the Senate of the United States, they would all tell you that they know about chemtrails. To a T. And either they know about them directly or they know about them indirectly. And I'd say more than the majority would know about them directly. And the reason being is because I think they've been sat down, that they've got taken to a back room somewhere. And they've basically been told, hey, this is what's happening with the environment. This is what's happening with the economy. This is what's happening maybe even with the solar system. And we're not all going to make it. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to manage the masses so that we are able to have a lower load on the planet once we go through this ecological disaster / transition. And, oh, by the way, if you support us while we're doing this, you'll get your little underground condo beneath the Denver airport or wherever the equivalent is. And so I think that these people, it's almost like that movie 2012 where they have the wristbands or the chips or the cards or whatever they are. They've got their e-pass so that when they get that text on their phone or their app or whatever, they go to their underground train or wherever that thing is, and they think they're going to get into their underground bunker and, be hermetically sealed and away from whatever's going to take place. I think this is the scenario that has been proposed to them. And I think that they believe that in their heart of hearts that there's nothing they can do. This is also another thing that they've been told. There's nothing that they can do. So you either go along with the program and you get to have your e-ticket punched, or you're out here with the rest of the bugs and you're going to get sprayed. But I think that to your point, what's going to happen is that they're going to realize that it's going to be too late. And the people that are going to be severely damaged by this over the long term will impact them. It will be their extended family. Maybe not them and their wife and their 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever, but their brothers and sisters and cousins and nieces and nephews. And all of a sudden, we're way too far down the line with this thing, and they can't do anything. They can't stop it. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. That's my sense.
Could be. Seems to make sense. That's, again, and I'm sure through DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, I sent you a document on that.
That's right.
They've got all this stuff out there. They've been developing stuff for bioterrorism for years, bio-war, but, defense mechanisms, and they've got their own scientific stuff. So I'm sure they tell people that, okay, here's a certain set of you, here's why we're doing this, and you guys are all going to have an antidote, so you won't be affected by it as you're moving about your daily life on the surface of the planet. You're going to be fine. But gee, didn't they I mean, just one example, they send these guys over to Vietnam, and, you know, Monsanto's got Agent Orange, and they're spraying the hell out of all these people in that country, and, you know, the people in that country were affected by it. Our people that were there were affected by it. I mean, the bottom line is, why would you trust these people? Their whole mindset is based on negativity, death, suffering, maiming, and destruction. That's their mindset. Mm-hmm. They're the pariah of this earth. You know, for the most part, people are very good people. They have empathy. They want to just have happiness and you know, a nice life. This is a minor number of people effectuating this, and obviously this has been going on for years. I think you, in the beginning of the program, talked about that. You know, these are very low vibrational people that are in control of the planet, and their whole thrust is A, natural resources, and B, the central banking system, economics. Right. That's what this is all about. Yeah. So all the military-industrial contractors like Raytheon, all these guys that are heavily embedded into the geoengineering thing, I mean, this is a huge moneymaker for these guys.
It's true.
And it's all about death and destruction, psychopathic behavior, no care for human life, and the direct opposite of natural law. Mm-hmm. So they're out of control. They're the pariah of our planet. They need to be held accountable and rounded up. The Earth needs to be allowed to return to its natural systems. We're all okay here. You know, some behaviors need to be changed, sure, with regard to the environment. But, you know, what people do on a personal level here, just individual human beings, doesn't even compare to what these guys are doing. I mean, this is a global operation. Most likely, you know, one of the agendas, obviously, is a military defense system, whether it's for cloaking, you know, God knows. They're probably using the fixed orbital satellites as well, mm-hmm. in conjunction with this. So these folks are misguided. It's just a basic principle. I mean, look, I'm a mother and I'm a grandmother. I'm a human being. Okay, take out of the component that I'm an American. I'm a human being. Right. And I didn't have my children. I didn't bring children into this world to have them subjected to this type of stuff. There's a very, very minor minority of people that are doing this, Robert, and we do need people to step up. We need people to understand that even if they've told you get the free pass, why would you trust these people? Look what they're doing. Look at their history of what they've done, and look what has happened. And so other folks are the collateral damage for their nefarious activities of death and destruction. It's just a repeating historical pattern, and it's not acceptable. It's 2014 here. Yeah. So, you know, we have commonality here because we all breathe the air, and I hope that people will put aside all these other agendas, you know, race, color, creed, political, all that stuff, and join together. And that's what we did up there in Kingman, Arizona. We had a woman who is a state senator who's doing what she's supposed to do, okay? The people that work for the state agencies for clean air, the EPA, they're not doing their jobs. They're just taking the word from the U.S. Air Force. And now this is pursuant to a conversation I had with a very high-ranking official at the EPA in Chicago. The guy flat out told me, okay, look, the Air Force is doing this. They've told us it's okay. And I said, that's great. Show me the environmental impact statements that evidence that this stuff is okay to be in the atmosphere. And he said, well, we don't have that. And I said, then you're not doing your job. That's all there is to it. Mm-hmm. These guys are public servants that serve at our pleasure. I'm not a servant to them. They're a servant to me. That's how this works. Their mentality is totally skewed. They think they're at a higher plane and upper level, as evidenced by the attorney's attitude that showed up there. I'm sure they weren't happy with me because I came in and gave the cold, hard facts that they're obligated. That this stuff does constitute, under Arizona law, it's a legal definition of what air pollution is here. You don't really need to change the laws here in Arizona. The laws in Arizona here have been codified. The definition of air pollution includes this stuff. So, sorry I'm rambling. I have a tendency to do that. So
I'm glad you brought it back to what you talked about there, because I think that what people, if you're going to get anything from the 60 minutes or so that we're talking together today, is that people found a way, and it took 2 years of persistence, but they found a way to get in front of a public official and make this a part of the public record. It's historic in many ways. So I think that this is the important thing that people need to glean from this conversation, that if you are committed and you have some support of some other people, then you can too find your own version of Dr. Kelli Ward. And if enough of us begin to do this, we're gonna hit some critical mass here. And at some point it will go to the next level. And instead of being some kind of fringe narrative, it will become part of the dialogue, the ongoing dialogue, and the debate as to whether or not we really need this. Because at some point, and it keeps getting closer and closer, Alexandra, they are now beginning to say, oh, we're doing this for your own good. You know, they don't come right out and say it. It's not on the front page of the New York Times, although the New York Times would be more than happy to put it on their front page, I'm sure. That this is, you know, in our best interests. So if enough of us get involved at this level, then we can change the debate, we can change the conversation, and it could actually be something that becomes not just viable, but an important thing to talk about, and to bring it out of the ghetto, you know, the conspiracy ghetto, so to speak. So what you've done is important, and I wanted to have you on the show and talk about this so that people understand that it can happen. And where do you go from here? What are some of your next steps?
Well, I wrote a follow-up letter to Dr. Ward, Senator Ward, and I let her know that, okay, you guys have been put on actual legal notice, as I stated, and that the ADEQ better take prompt remedial action. And if they don't within a reasonable time, I'll be getting a hold of the Attorney General here. The Attorney General acts as the lawyer to the ADEQ, but he can independently do something about this himself. So we'll see what happens with that. Former State Senator Karen Johnson, who was in the documentary Why in the World Are They Spraying, is trying to help me with opening the door to Tom Horn is his name. He's the current guy, and Karen knows him. So I'm making that move because underneath the law, you know, it also states that the attorney, you know, the AG is responsible for that agency. And if that doesn't work, then the people can initiate action. StopSprayingAZ.org, and I really would like people to go to that website and download the petition signature forms. Their main push is getting signatures from folks to present to the Arizona legislative body. That we've got a lot of people here that want something done about this. And, you know, there's power in numbers. Kelli Ward was the first state senator to honor her sacred oath, and I am so grateful to her. And I hope people go to her Facebook page and let her know that she's a great woman and that she's doing the right thing. She's doing what she's paid to do, and that is listen to her constituents. And when she's given new information, because I gave her a packet of fact-based information, and I got a lot more to give to her, if she'll be open to it, she needs to push for that investigation. Now, she doesn't work for the ADEQ, so she can't tell them what to do, but the Attorney General can. Mm-hmm. And the lawyer that was there, her whole set of talking points, there's no basis in fact. Okay, everything she talked about, no basis in fact. I pointed out the facts. I pointed out the law. Their website is a sham. They say that it's jet engine contrails, which are vapor. These are not jet engine emissions. These are specially retrofitted jets that have nozzles on them. Obviously, inside of these jets, there's tanks. They are on a tarmac somewhere here, probably at Air Force bases in Arizona. They load them up. They take off. The state, I maintain that the state does have jurisdiction because those airplanes take off from here, and no matter who is the source, or in environmental law, it's the source or the generator, they do have jurisdiction. And I guess it's not a happy picture for somebody to have to confront the United States Air Force, but that's where this is headed, whether people like it or not. These are airplanes, and the guy that is in charge of the United States Air Force, his name is General Mark A. Welsh. He's on Facebook. He was just recently on the Jimmy Fallon show. So apparently the guy that's in charge of all these airplanes has got enough time to be on a late-night talk show yucking it up while we, the people, are being poisoned. So, you know, all roads lead to the Air Force. I mean, you know, these are airplanes. And if it's not the military doing it, Robert, perhaps they figured out for indemnity and liability issues, they've got subcontractors doing it. I don't know, but I know they're in that airspace. These are not rogue airplanes, because if they were, they'd send up fighter jets and take them down. It's our own military doing this, or they're subcontracting it out. And it's not acceptable. You know, I'm just, you know, that's not acceptable. So I really want people to go to Senator Kelli Ward, to her Facebook page. People can find me on Facebook, Alexandra Hunter. I recommend people go to stopsprayingaz.org. You can download these sign-up sheets or petition sheets. You can download them. We need signatures from all over Arizona, not just here in the Valley. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a few of the key websites, Dane Wigington's website, geoengineeringwatch.org. Rosalind Peterson's website is the Agriculture Defense Coalition.org or California Skywatch.com. Harold Save is a great activist out of Florida, and his website is chemtrailsplanet.net. There's a whole host of websites out there for folks to do their due diligence and research that contain, you know, thousands of hours of research that's been put together. And my understanding is that on July 15th, up in Redding, California, there's going to be a meeting there with the Shasta County Board of Supervisors that Dane and Rosalind and Francis Mangels and quite a few other just key people are going to be doing a public presentation there as well. So I encourage people to go if they're in that part of the country and support those key activists who have spent these people have spent years on this, and I hold them all in very high regard. So they're working it out there on July 15th in Redding, California with the County Board of Supervisors in Shasta County, and folks need to support them in their efforts as well, because they are really the veteran leaders of this movement. And again, the only reason they're doing this is because they care about life as well and our survival. So, you know, I love them all very much, and I really hold them in high regard.
So Dane Wigington, of course, who's been on the show, is kind of the lead dog and way out in front with all this work and doing an amazing job. The other day I was on Facebook and I posted something along the lines of I believe it was a link from Lake Mammoth, and they were spraying on Lake Mammoth. And so I posted that link and I said, look, this is something we have to wrap our heads around. We got to get rid of our bipartisan issues and really focus on the one thing that connects us and unites us, which is the air, the atmosphere, where we breathe. This should be front and center, the one issue we're all dealing with. Everything else is just a distraction. And
right.
And one of the comments I got was from a guy that I've known since the 1990s. He actually works for the state of California. He's in social services. And he's a musician. He's kind of an intellectual, he's an athlete. He would like to think that he's a free thinker and an intellectual, but he's kind of hemmed in by shoulds and shouldn'ts in some ways. But he said to me on that post, where's the hard science on this, Robert? And I said, well, go look up Dane Wigington, because you can find good hard science through Dane.
Okay, well, listen, if he's in California, here's where he should go. He needs to go to Rosalind Peterson's website. She is the grande dame of our movement. She's gone in front of the United Nations. Her website, the Agriculture Defense Coalition.org, has mostly California-based data on the water samples, which were there in that state, were being tested, and then they cut it all off in 2005, 2006. So the data's there. The data is there. That guy just needs to take the time to look it up. These people that have created these websites are doing this as a public service,
right,
for everybody else. Do people understand the amount of time, intellectual thought that goes into this and expertise? We're not doing this because it's fun. We're doing this as a service to humanity. He needs to go to Mrs. Peterson's website. And she is very, very precise. She's very precise in her approach to this. She will only go at this from a fact-based approach. And I hold her in the very highest regard. You know, I've gotten to know her a little bit, and I agree with her MO. So your buddy, he needs to go to her website, and he needs to spend a few weeks reading this stuff, understanding it. The data's there. It's there, and it's free to get. And all you have to do is take the time. So
I agree. Well, speaking of taking time, I want to thank you for taking the time out on this 4th of July and spending the hour with us and giving us some updates. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate your work. You're tireless, and on this day when we celebrate what theoretically is what makes us all Americans, you, in my estimation, are a true American. So thank you for all you do, Alexandra. And we'll catch up with you.
Thank you, Robert. You're the guy that provides the format for me to talk about this. And you know, I hope you maybe can get Rosalind Peterson to come on your program, Robert, and talk to her, because she is way far advanced than someone like me. I mean, I've only been onto this thing for 2.5 years, and she's, you know, there's so many more people that can speak to the technical end of this, and you know, I can give you her number if you want to get a hold of her. So
yeah, let's do that.
Offline.
Let's connect with that, and let's see if we can get her on the show in the next couple of weeks. I think it'd be great. Let's try to keep this momentum going. Let's try to keep the awareness active. Let's not insult other people that insult us. Let's be kind and respectful. Point them to the right sources, and appeal to their humanity. And if that doesn't work, then you just move on. And if somebody else is open to it, then you share it with them. I think that's the best place that we can go with it. But let's try to keep this momentum going in our own way. And so let's get her on the air here, and let's keep the dialogue happening.
Well, thank you for providing me the opportunity to come back on your program. You're just an incredible human being, and I have a lot of respect for you, and thank you for you know, putting it out there, just to continue to put the higher vibrational energetic out to get this paradigm shift happening. And I think we're going to be successful. There's some turbulence in a ride like this, but I think, if people take the time and really look into it, they'll see that we're telling them the truth, and it's because we're coming from a place of love.
Amen to that. All right, well, you go out and enjoy your day, and I'll catch up with you somewhere down the line, and I know I'll see you on Facebook, okay?
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, bye, Alexandra.
Bye-bye.
That is Alexandra May Hunter, and she is a chemtrail, a.k.a. geoengineering activist from Phoenix, Arizona, and was part of the historic June 25th hearing in Kingman, Arizona. And if you want to, you can go to Facebook and you can actually go to Dr. Kelli Ward's page. That's K-E-L-I Ward, W-A-R-D, Kelli Ward. You can actually thank her for having that open forum, which is part of what she is here to do. She is a public servant. That is what we theoretically pay her to do, is to look after our interests. And our interests in this case are the air we breathe and the water we drink and the food we eat. Because when you get into chemtrails and geoengineering and nanoparticulates, it is part of a cycle. It is part of an entire life cycle, right? Air, water, earth, plant, food, body. That's where it's at. So go thank her. Tell her thank you. I think it's a good thing to do. And if you have any interest in doing this on your own, where you live, the template is there. It's going to take persistence, and you're going to have to do some legwork and find one person who is mildly sympathetic to your cause. So identifying who that person is important. And these are not issues that are sexy for them. It's not going to put any money in their pocket. So, the one thing that you'll have to somehow either, wrangle them with is your persistence and their respect or their fear. So either one of those you're going to have to master and bring into the fray so you can actually have an open forum or a meeting like the one they had in Arizona. But let's not stop now. Let's keep it going. Let's see if we can keep some momentum happening here. And I'll do my best to dedicate as much program as I can to the chemtrail issue because I think it's a big one. I think it's the biggest one we're facing. All right, so I think that's it. We're just going to do a short show today. It's Independence Day, theoretically, right? So to stay independent, I have work I have to do. Yes, I have to work. I have to put on my other hats. I go from my radio hat to my astrologer cap, my pointy cap. And I'm doing readings today. So, got to cut it short. Got to transition. Got to move on. If you would like to donate to this show, you can do so at robertphoenix.com. Any donations are highly appreciated. And last time I was on the air, I said that I would give anybody who donates, and I'm not putting a limitation on the donation, a 6-month transit report. A 6-month transit report for any donation that I receive at robertphoenix.com, so I can keep the radio show alive, keep the blog alive, and all. My cat's alive, my kid alive, me alive. So anybody that does that, I'll send you a 6-month report. Somebody did that. You know what? You know what I did? I went beyond the 6-month report. I actually gave them a reading. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. And I knew them anyway. So, all right, that's it. I'll be back Friday. Maybe we'll get Rosalind Peterson on the air next Friday with the Friday FARcast. I'll be back on Monday with the 11th House Radio, and we'll take over where we left off on last Monday, which is we'll be looking at the descendants, the shadow of the ascendant. We'll be looking at the stars, weeks, and of course live readings as well. So have yourself a great holiday if you're listening to this within the confines of the continental U.S., and if you're not, have a great weekend anyway. I think the American values, the true American values, not the false, synthetic, rabid, capitalist, fascistic, proto-communistic, satanic, luciferic values that have been foisted upon us through the open marketplace, but the real values of equality, liberty, justice, truth, creativity, innovation. These are the things that we as Americans theoretically hold in a sacred trust for one another, independent of race, color, or creed. So these values, if you're listening to this broadcast anywhere in the world, I wish you your own Independence Day, your own great Independence Day, and may you be thoroughly independent and interdependent from this moment forward, fully informed and fully awake. This is Robert Phoenix. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'll see you all on Monday with 11th House Radio. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.